At all. Thank you very much. We're going to mosey over here, and the first thing I'd like to do is apologize to all you people, especially from Pontotoc, who know all these stories already. I didn't, when I read the book, well, before I read the book, when Babe asked me to do this, I thought, well, that's a long interview. I hope the book's good. And, then I read the book and realized that after I'd written my first set of questions, I'd narrowed it down to about a 3-hour interview instead, and that was just a highlight. So the problem is that you're not going to get some of the stuff that you probably want because we just don't have the time. It's a fascinating book, and there's some things that I just didn't know. And I interviewed you a few years ago here, and I've read a lot about you, and I've followed your career, and I thought I was pretty well versed on you until I read the book. And Jeff managed to bring out a lot of things that I thought were fascinating. So we're going to try to hit on some of those as well. The one thing you'll notice from the last time I was here doing something like this is that I now have to wear glasses to read my own notes. But I did make them bigger, Babe. I did do bigger font for myself. So it was a long road from Pontotoc in 1943 to the Lee County Library.
Yeah. Is this thing working? Can you hear me?
It is. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay. A fascinating long road. And you told me a few years ago when I asked you to give a speech, you said, I don't give speeches, I think in 3-minute intervals and they have to rhyme. You said, but if you'll ask me questions, I'll answer them. And so I did what I've done with anybody else I've ever interviewed. I called him a few days beforehand and I said, is there anything that you want me to hit on or leave out? Is there anything that you don't want me to talk to you about? And he said, these questions are about me, right? I said, yes, they are. And he said, I'm pretty sure I know the answer. So you just go ahead and ask whatever you want to. So this is my first question. Was it easier? I know you well enough to know that you're not, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert or both?
Probably an introvert, but it really depends on the situation.
Yeah.
When I'm talking something like this, I tend to be more outgoing, but you know, if I'm home or something, I'm laying there watching TV, so.
Yeah, well, it just occurred to me that it might have been easier for you to talk to Jeff about these stories than it is to talk about yourself out in public. You don't brag a lot about yourself. You tend to, in the book, you brag a lot about your band and about other things that are going on in your life and the people you know, but you don't say a lot about yourself.
Well, you know, my first concept for this book was to have Jeff write it and just do interviews with me, and he write all the thing in third person. But we decided to do it in first person, and it was kind of awkward for me to write about myself, some of the honors, you know, that kind of thing. And I told Jeff, I said, you know, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but he just talked me into doing it, so I did it.
Well, it is interesting because I didn't realize until the book that I didn't ever think about it, but you had, and we talked about it a little bit in the interview, but you had Jimmy Weatherly, and your bands were all Jimmy or Jim or something, but you never named them that. Other people in your band put your name at the front of it, not you.
Put my name in front?
Yes, somebody else in your band said we should call this Jim Weatherly in the Vegas.
Yeah.
That wasn't your idea, it was somebody else's idea.
Pat Kincaid was the one that always put my name in front, and then it just kind of, we just kind of did it that way from then on, you know.
Yeah.
He said I was an Ole Miss quarterback, so he said, we need to put your name out front.
That was a big deal, especially in the 60s.
Yeah.
There's a quote from the poem Hiawatha that says, I, the friend of man, my damn it, have come to warn you and instruct you how by struggle and by labor you may gain what you have prayed for. Rise from your bed of branches, rise, O youth, and wrestle with me. And I thought as I was reading the book that's kind of your life story. It is hard work and wrestling and struggling and struggling. I mean, you started at Ole Miss. There were 17 quarterbacks on the roster when you were at Ole Miss.
Well, there were 17 quarterbacks signed when I was a freshman.
Right.
17 freshman quarterbacks came in when I did.
That's just. I would have tried out for another position if it were me, but you didn't.
Well, I was really, I just thought that's the way it was.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything about it. Nowadays, some schools don't even recruit one quarterback.
Right. Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
That's my alma mater. But you also struggle to get recognition for your band. Matter of fact, you all called. I thought it was a great idea. You sent a letter to every class president of a high school in the state of Mississippi asking if you could play at their form.
Well, that was Pat Kincaid. Pat's from Clarksdale, and I met him in the spring of my freshman year at Ole Miss, and he played guitar, and we just kind of became buddies and sat around picking guitar a lot. And Pat was a real businessman too, and he really took care of us as far as booking dances and booking shows and sending out letters. That was all his doing, not mine.
Yeah, but it was work. I mean, it's hard work. Hard work is what got you success on everything. What do you think is your best quality?
Oh gosh. I really feel I'm pretty easy to get along with.
That's a good quality. Yeah. What do you think it was an advantage to grow up in Pontotoc?
I do.
There are a lot of Pontotoc people here, so I just want you to know that.
I really I feel blessed to have grown up in Pontotoc at the time I did. Of course, I didn't know any different, but as you look back on it, you think, oh my goodness, this was a true blessing to be around these people. And as a matter of fact, in writing a book, Jeff and I had a lot more stories about people in Pontotoc. Leonard Farber being one of them. And we wound up with 120,000 words, which was double what we needed.
Right.
So we had to edit a lot of stuff out that we really wanted in there.
Do you want to tell us that story now?
No, it was just about how Leonard was always busy selling shoes.
Yeah.
And I was in there one time trying on a pair of cowboy boots, and everybody called Leonard by the way. And Leonard came walking up to me and said, ooh, them cowboy boots sure look good on you, by the way, but I'm trying to sell them, by the way.
One thing you said in the book that I thought was really interesting, you used to do what I used to do down at the Lyric Theater down here on Saturdays. You would go down and watch the Saturday matinees, cowboy shows.
Right.
And you just said something I thought was really interesting that, and I can prompt you if you don't remember what you said in the book, but about watching those shows and what it did for you character-wise.
Well, those old black and white cowboy movies, actually I wrote a song about it called Too Many Movies. But the good guy always won, and it had a real good message, even though people consider them violent because they have guns. They were toy guns, but it was. I learned a lot about trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the cowboys named Wild Bill Elliott. You remember Wild Bill Elliott? And on just about all of his movies, he always had the line, "But I'm just a peaceable man." That stayed with me. I feel like I'm a peaceable man.
And one thing you said in the book is today the heroes are so complicated that you can't figure out, and they're glad to blur the lines between good and bad and all that. It makes it confusing for people.
They don't make movies for me anymore.
12 years old, you got your first guitar, and your dad made your amp out of a radio.
Did. Old Cathedral Philco tabletop.
And if my dad did that, he'd still be working on it today. That's amazing to me. It's pretty impressive.
Well, he soldered I didn't have a place to plug the guitar into the amp. He just soldered it directly to the speaker. So I couldn't plug it and unplug it, so everywhere I took my guitar, I had to carry that radio with me.
And you said you found out you could write songs when you were about 12 years old. So
12 or 13, somewhere along there. I really don't remember when, but it was around that particular time.
But do you remember your first song you wrote?
I do, but let's don't talk about it. It's just not very good.
Well, we can talk about it. You don't have to sing it. So it wasn't very good.
No, it was just
3 chords and the truth.
kinda.
Kinda? Yeah. But it got you going.
Yeah.
It's you have 2 sisters and a brother, Shan, who's how much younger is Shan than you?
I'm sorry.
How much younger is Shan than you?
13 or 14 years.
Yeah. So I'm sure that, and this goes to natural talent in a family, because I'm sure they think that that you helped him with his football and all that stuff, and people think that my brother helped me with my tennis. But when I was 10, Jack was in college. By the time, when Shan was 10, you were in L.A.
Right.
But you do have a family full of athletes. Yeah, just natural talent. And you lost your dad when you were 14, and I know that changed you and made you the man of the house, and that was pretty tough. But there was one part that literally I laughed out loud at, and that was the relationship with you and your mom after that. And you said what you would do when y'all would get in arguments sometimes.
Yeah.
Tell them what you would do.
That's true. It's a true story. My mom was never as strict as my dad, and after he died, she was trying to be both mother and father, and we had a lot of arguments about that kind of thing because I was growing up and wanted my freedom and everything. But I just found out that the way to end those arguments, I would pick her up and sit her on top of the refrigerator. And she couldn't get down, so she would be yelling, she'd be mad, but she'd start yelling and start laughing. So saying, "James Dexter, get me down from here." And so I'd come get her down, and we'd forget about the argument until the next time, and then I'd sit her on the refrigerator again.
I was in the car, and Annette was driving, and I read that part and just started laughing out loud.
Kind of a funny picture.
It is a really funny picture. To me, in my mind, it was really funny. Now, the Impaladors. Yeah, Jimmy Weatherly and the Impaladors. That was your first band, and somehow that little band managed to go up to Memphis and get on the George Klein show like 3 or 4 times.
Well, actually, that was not the Impaladors. It was the Vegas. But it sounds like it in the book that the way it was written, it was the Impaladors.
Good, thank you. I just wanted people to know I did my research.
It was the Vegas. The guys from Ole Miss.
All right. So y'all got on the George Klein show. What I did not realize was how much a band that you were in had to do with everything that you did, from high school to college to football to LA to the World's Fair, all those things. That was kind of the anchor for what you were able to do for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. We started doing it just because it was fun. We enjoyed it. It was kind of a way for us to relax and everything. And when we wound up in 1966, we wound up going to California, and after the band split up, I realized that how much they meant to me, how much they had meant to me, And I felt lost. I felt all alone because from the time I was in ninth or 10th grade, all throughout college and LA years, I'd been a member of a band. So when you're not a member of them anymore, you feel kind of like, where's my support group?
Yeah, which scary.
Yeah.
It'd be scary, yeah. All right, before we get there, though, I got to go back to football because there's a lot to talk about in football, and I don't want to miss some of that. 62 season, you managed to get yourself in a position to play a lot during that season, and that was the only undefeated season, national champions, all of that. The question that I want to talk about a little bit is that was also integration, and there was a lot going on. And you talk about it a little bit in the book. I remember Frank Dowsing was a first African American in high school at Tupelo High School. And one thing that made it so much easier for people to handle was that he was also the best athlete we'd ever had at Tupelo High School. And we won a lot more games with Frank than without him. And everybody was going, this thing may not be as bad as it looked like. And so, but giving some people something else to think about during that fall had to have been a big deal for Ole Miss.
Yeah, but the coaches really handled it well. They kept us focused, kept us away from a lot of that. Some of the guys, went out when they were having the riots that night at Ole Miss. But I didn't want any part of it. I just went back to my room and played my guitar.
They said that the coaches went through, which is different than they would today. The coaches went through and took everybody's guns out of their room.
Yeah.
Because everybody were hunters and they had their rifles and their shotguns, and everybody took them out of their rooms. I thought it's kind of like making everybody quit smoking on an airplane. I just don't think about that anymore. So there was one time, though, everybody remembers Coach Vaught.
Yeah.
He's iconic. And there was a great story about the military taking over the practice field.
Yeah.
And him not liking that.
No, nobody asked him or asked anybody. The military they basically took over the whole campus. But the one thing that they did that they shouldn't have done was pitch tents and land helicopters on our practice field. And there was a guy named Don Estes, who was one of our student managers. And Don tells a funny story in there, too, because he said he didn't think Coach Vaught ever knew his name. He always just said, "Manager, go do this. Manager, do that." So he told Don, he said, "Manager, go out there and get those guys off that practice field." Don said, that was an order from Coach Vaught, so I did it. He went out there and he found somebody with some rank and said, "Y'all got to move all this stuff off this field." And the guy says, "Who are you?" He said, "Coach Vaught wants y'all to get this stuff off that practice field." And as the story goes, Louis Guy always used to say, "That's the fastest the Army ever moved." An order from Coach Vaught got carried out.
1962 Egg Bowl. It's the fourth quarter. Ole Miss is up 7-6. The ball's on the state 43-yard line, and Coach Vaught calls your number and sends you in with a play that he had recently changed up the week before. Is that right?
The play?
Yeah.
Yeah. I never expected him to put me in that game. I mean, it was the last game of the undefeated season, and the score was 7-6. We were ahead 7-6, and he called for me to go in. I guess it was sometime in the third quarter or fourth quarter. I can't really remember.
Start of the fourth quarter.
Start of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. And told me to run a play called 35 Trap. He had changed the play that week from having a right guard pull to the left into the 5-hole. Some of you may not relate to this, but he changed it to where the he had the tackle, the right tackle pull, and lead the back into the 5-hole. And the back, originally, following the guard, would take a step over and cut in behind. When the tackle pulled, he had the halfback step up and then follow the tackle into the 5-hole. I was supposed to step more shallow for that play. And when he put me in, and I called it, and I stepped too deep.
And so I'm the running back, and I'm now here, and you're back there about to hand off to me.
David Jennings stepped up to come that way. I rolled around, and when I rolled around, David was already gone. And I couldn't reach him, but I noticed Mississippi State's left end noticed our tackle pull, and he crashed. He followed our tackle. And the outside linebacker saw that, and he started moving to the inside. And the safety pulled to the inside. And when I looked up, there was nobody out there. It was really like a dream. Everything started to move in slow motion, because I thought, wow. And I just took off running around that end, and nobody saw me until I was about on the 20-yard line, and it was too late to catch me. So I scored, and we wound up beating them 13-6, because we missed the extra point. But that play made it to where they couldn't beat us with a field goal.
Yeah, it was a big play.
If they had made a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, they would have tied us. So
it was a big play, and you've taken credit for knowing that was going to happen all along till this book, right?
Well, funny thing is, when I scored, I was running off the field back to the bench, and I was laughing. It was still kind of unreal to me, and Doc Knight, who was our trainer, came running on the field to greet me, and Doc, he was serious. I said, Doc, I missed the handoff. He said, don't tell anybody. So
until now,
I guess I could have played along and said it was Coach Vaught's invention all along, but I would have had to live with that lie.
Yeah,
I didn't want to do that.
63 is another great year, undefeated in the regular season, right? We got to the Sugar Bowl and set a national record for the most, it was snowing, right? Snowing that year.
Most fumbles.
17 fumbles in a game. Is that still a record? Seems like it should be.
It should be.
Yeah, if it's not, it should be.
So, I forget who, it's in the book, but I forgot who it was that wrote in one of the newspapers that he'd never seen a game with 17 fumbles that was so exciting. Because Alabama beat us 12-7.
Yeah.
So it was a close game.
It was a close game.
One of our trainers swears that Alabama was using different balls from what we were, and we had ours pumped up to the full level, and he swears Alabama had let some of the air out of their balls, and that's why they fumbled less than we did and could throw the ball. Now, I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying
Tom Brady watched that game. I guess he was there as a kid. All right, 64 came, and your band keeps playing all through all of this, but not during football season. But they start pegging you as the singing quarterback, which you didn't like very much, right? Did you not like that, or did you like that?
No. After the 63 season, I never played with my band during football season. But after the season, you know, we played some fraternity parties and sorority parties and things like that. And the summer of '64, we decided to go down to the Gulf Coast and see if we could just find some work. And we found some people, Jake and John Mladnich, who's the Fiesta Club, liked what they heard, and they hired us to play the whole summer. The newspaper down there was, I think, the first one down in Biloxi to start using the term the singing quarterback. And then they had on the marquee out in front of the Fiesta Club, they had the singing Ole Miss quarterback. I'd always wanted to try to keep those things separate, but I realized it was an impossibility. You just couldn't do it.
It probably did make it a little more challenging when you got out of football and were doing that, and still known a little bit as a football player who also played guitar and wrote songs, because they don't take you quite as seriously. Is that right? You had to overcome that?
No, I really never had a problem with that, except maybe some of the fans.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't like it too much.
Thought you weren't paying attention to football?
Huh?
Thought you weren't paying attention to the football game?
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with it. It's just like any summer job. I loaded freight one summer, but that didn't affect me from playing football.
Nobody got mad at you for that either, did they? Yeah, I understand that. '64 was a disappointing season because y'all had won like almost every game you'd played for like 4 decades or something like that. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. And then you had a tough year. You were hurt most of the season. You had what we call turf toe now and some other things. And y'all lost some close games, and that was from the standards of Ole Miss, for a Vanderbilt guy, it would have been a huge season for us. But from your standard, it was not a great season.
No.
And so, what did you learn from that season about yourself?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I learned anything about myself.
I'm going to throw that away.
Did it say in the book what I did learn?
No, it didn't. That was just one of my questions. I didn't. I ran it by somebody before I asked it, but and they thought it was a good question. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
it's a tough season. You did say in the book that haunted you for a long time.
Well, yeah.
And so I figured if it haunted you, you thought about it a lot, and from that you probably learned something. It was an easy question to come up with.
It was the first time in 18 years that Ole Miss had lost to Mississippi State. And I was the quarterback. Now that's either something you can remember or something you want to forget. Yeah, it did. It stayed with me all my life. Football was real important to me. Winning was important to me. And I always kind of felt like that maybe the fans, you know, had been right. Not that I felt that, but it's, you know, started to just eat at me.
All right, we don't have to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
We're going to move on to something happier.
I may start crying.
I know. I may start crying too. I'm with you. I do want to spend some time on your band that went to, and I'm not going to, because I know they want to hear about your songwriting too, and we only have so much time here. But your band, we did some amazing. Y'all went to the World's Fair without a gig, hoping you could find one. You spent some time up there. Then you came down to Pennsylvania for a summer. Then you decided to move out to L.A. And somehow you became like the Where's Waldo band of Hollywood over the next 3 or 4 years. It was incredible. And so, there are just too many stories to tell. And there's easily an hour on this band. It's not me.
Is that my phone? That's okay. You don't have to answer it.
Well, we can answer it right now if you want. It's probably Roberta or Gladys Knight or somebody. I don't know. So your band, we're gonna do the speed round.
Let me say this before that.
Yeah.
You realize that we're sitting here talking about football from 50 years ago.
Right.
When I was at Ole Miss in '64, 50 years ago, with what? 1914?
2014.
Do you think people really sat around talking about Ole Miss football in '64 about the 1914 season?
No.
I thought about that a lot.
Yeah, it was a special time. Yeah, it was. All right, the band. This is a speed round. I'm just going to name somebody, and you can either say pass or you can tell a story about them. Okay? Because I don't even know. They ended up everywhere. I'm telling you, they ended up everywhere. So here, Joan Collins, loved your band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she helped y'all get started.
We played a club called The Factory, and it was owned by some actors and some lawyers and everything, and Anthony Newley was one of the owners, and Joan Collins kind of became the queen of The Factory. And she just absolutely loved us. And I mean, she took us down to the Western Costume to find costumes for a party she was throwing at her house, and where we were guests. We weren't playing, but we had some pictures made with her and everything. She really loved us, and she was a really nice lady. We really enjoyed being around her.
And at the Factory, you got there early one day and decided, yeah, you know where I'm going, and decided to go in one of the rooms you weren't sure you were supposed to be in, and laid down on the couch and started watching TV, and then somebody knocked on the door.
We got there early, and Pat Kincaid talked Leland Russell and I. Leland was our bass player. Talked us into going into the director's room, which was a little room off the main area of the club, and it had couches all around the wall. And we weren't sure. Leland and I said, I don't know. We might get in trouble doing that. And they said, nah, let's go in. So we went in there and laid down, and we were watching TV, and the movie on TV was HUD. Excuse me. With Paul Newman. And I mean, you can't make this stuff up. In a few minutes, there was a knock on the door, and the door opened, and somebody said, Newman here. Can I come in and use the phone? Paul Newman was one of the owners of the Factory. And he was asking us if he could come into his room and use his phone. So there was a little table with the phone on it right under the TV, which was up high. And he sat down on that table and started to dial, and he looked up and he went, hey, that's me. And he went and laid down on one of the couches, and we just watched TV with Paul Newman.
That's just, you need some?
Thanks.
Yeah. And so in Richard Harris, you crashed at his house one night because you played a gig and couldn't find one of your bandmates, so you just stayed there?
Couldn't find our manager.
Your manager. So you just crashed on his couch, and he woke up in the morning and came down his robe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He came down. Richard Harris, he had just done Camelot, the movie, and he threw a party at his house. And so when it came time to pack up and leave, we couldn't find our manager. So we all just decided to stay there and maybe try to find him in the morning. And Richard Harris, in the morning, Richard Harris came strolling down the stairs in his robe and said, hello, mates. Just like finding somebody sleeping on his couch and in the kitchen and everything, like that was just something that always happened. And then our manager came walking in from the patio. He had fallen asleep outside and just slept there.
I've been in bands since college. I don't have one single story like that, and you have like 85 stories like that. Dean Martin, you played for his daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
Sammy Davis Jr. came and sang on stage with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot what we played, but yeah.
And
we were always meeting people in the factory because the factory was actually formed for the movie industry people, like actors and directors and things like that, so they could come there and not be bothered with the paparazzi and stuff like that. So, what was that?
That's all right. You were playing a party one night, and somebody came up to you and asked why nobody was dancing.
Oh, yeah.
Who was that?
Well, no, that was at a party at Robert Mitchum's house.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah. I didn't mean to indicate it wasn't at a really famous person's house.
We were playing a party at Robert Mitchum's house, and that's a story in itself, which I'll just hold off on.
Well, one of your bandmates was hitting on his daughter, right?
Well, not hitting on her. They became friends. They just became good friends. And she invited us over the Saturday after Thanksgiving to eat steaks at their house. So it was Leland Russell, our bass player. He looked like a beetle. And so we were eating outside, and I guess from that, I think Leland mentioned to her, like, hey, we're just struggling. We're just trying to make money playing these clubs and parties and everything. And she told her dad, and her dad, Robert Mitchum, decided to throw a party so we could make some money. That was the reason he did it. Our guitar player, Pat Kincaid, walked by Steve McQueen's chair, and Steve McQueen said, hey, you guys are good, but why is nobody dancing? And Pat just said, you know, when the first people get up and dance, everybody else will. So that when we started the next set, Steve McQueen and his wife got up and got on the dance floor. And everybody else started getting up. So he actually did us a favor by doing that.
He did. Never happened to me. A couple more things with your band, then we're going to move on to songwriting. One is, I just have to mention this, you were on Fred Astaire's show.
We did the Fred Astaire special with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just
cool. We
met
him at the factory, too. He was watching us play and just sent somebody to tell us to come talk to him on a break. And so we went and talked to him, and he said, would you guys do my television special with me?
Of course he did.
And so we did. So we did one of his old songs. We did Top Hat, but we did a rock version of it. And that's what happened on that show.
And then Nancy Sinatra, you went to Vietnam with her.
Vietnam with Nancy.
Which
spent 2 weeks over there dodging bullets and
you said she was a workaholic. You said she was a workaholic when you were there.
Well, Nancy wanted to do that to make a difference.
Yeah.
She really didn't go to relax, and she was always pushing us to do things when we had a day off and things like that. One of the sweetest people you'd ever meet.
And what did and your impression of Vietnam when you went over there at that time?
Well,
my daughter's going there in 3 months.
It was scary.
Yeah.
It was really scary. Fortunately, we didn't see any fighting or anything like that, but there were always a lot of people around us carrying guns.
Yeah.
You know, because you just never knew.
Right. But one last thing on the band, then I'll leave you alone. This doesn't really have to do with the band, but 3 of your bandmates, you and 2 bandmates, decided to earn a little money.
Oh, yeah.
So y'all remember the Elvis 1968 comeback special, right? I mean, that's iconic. Now, what you probably don't know is that Jimmy was there. Of course he was. He was in L.A. and Jimmy was Where's Waldo in L.A. That's who he was. So you were, and I can't wait to see it again, Tom. We got to watch this to see him.
It's funny you said that. I was watching the new documentary on Elvis called The Searcher.
Yeah.
I was watching it last night, and they showed a clip of that. What happened is we heard that they were holding auditions for people who could move like Elvis. So four of us went over to the audition, and they told us to move like Elvis, and we got hired except for Leland. He was too short. So we were on that scaffold up behind Elvis when he did his first song. There was a scaffold up behind us, and we had about 50 guys up there, all holding guitars and kind of making Elvis moves and everything. And I mean, it was surreal. We were watching Elvis perform down in front of us while we were doing all that. And I thought, you know, this is only in Hollywood. You know?
Yeah, you had a lot of only in Hollywood moments. Your band, 5 years, your band didn't make it quite as long as the Beatles. They were 7 years, but 5 years, and some of your bands started going back, drifting back home. You were out on your own for the first time, as you said. You don't have to. I'm going to just mention this. You don't have to tell this story because you got a lot to do. But Jim Nabors kept you afloat by hiring you as a songwriter for a while, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, Lee Majors was a friend of Jim's, and Lee really loved my songs. And he just said, this was before I wrote Midnight Train to Georgia.
Right.
And he said, I'd like to introduce you to Jim Nabors and let him hear what you're doing. And so we went over to Jim's house, and I played him some songs. And he just said, I really like this. He said, if you ever need a job writing songs, he said, call me. And he gave me his phone number. So after we split up, after about a month or month and a half after we split up, I really didn't have any options left because I wasn't making any headroads. I couldn't get any people that liked what I was doing. And I called Jim and I said, are you serious? Were you serious about signing me as a songwriter? And he said, oh, yeah. Yeah. He said, go over to Dick Link, who was his manager, and make a deal. Well, I didn't have an attorney, and I thought, you know, what the heck? All they can do is tell me no. So I went over to Dick Link's office and walked in, and he got right to the point. He said, Jim tells me you want to make a deal for your songs. And I said, yes, sir. And he said, well, what do you want? Well, I knew that unknown, unproven songwriters at that time made about $50 a week. Maybe. And I thought, you know, I can't live on $50 a week. I can't do that. So I said, I want $300 a week because I need it and I'm worth it. And I figured to hear, that's ridiculous. Get out of here. He didn't bat an eye. He just said, okay, I'll have the papers drawn up. So that's the reason I signed with Jim's company.
Yeah, it's a good reason.
And why I was willing to part with my copyrights at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, $300 a week was a lot of money at that time.
Yeah, and your dealings with copyrights and when you took a stand and did was fascinating to me in the book.
What's that?
Just the way that you held on to your rights to your music sometimes when it was tough to do and things like that. Right. That was fascinating and huge risk for you at times because, I mean, that's really what launched your career were some of those songs that you refused to give the rights to.
Well, after about 2.5 years of writing for Jim's company, he let me go because they had canceled his variety show, and he said, I just don't really need a songwriter anymore, so I'm gonna have to let you go. And I understood, but I had saved $7,000 of the money he had paid me over 2.5 years. And I was beginning to wear down, and I was getting rejected a lot. People weren't cutting my songs, and people were telling me I should write like this, or I should write like that, or do this, and it just kind of started to wear on me. So I decided that when that $7,000 was gone, I was going to go back to Ole Miss, get my teaching degree, finish my degree. All I lacked was my practice teaching, and I was going to coach football. So there's a lot of things that happened in between there to get to this point, but the point is I finally met one guy. I walked in his office and he said, let me hear what you got. So I gave him a reel-to-reel tape, and he put it on, and he leaned back in his chair and he closed his eyes, and he was just sitting there. And after about 2.5 songs, he stopped the tape. And he leaned up and he said, I want you to be at my attorney's office in the morning at 9 o'clock. I'm going to sign you to a songwriter contract. He said, I'm not going to pay you any money except what's required by law, which was $6,000 a year at the time. But then he said, but I promise you, I will push your songs through the sky. That was a commitment that I'd been looking for. There was excitement. There was something in his voice and in his demeanor that told me this was where I should be. And I just went with my gut feeling, and I said, I'll be there. So I signed with a guy named Larry Gordon, and Larry got all my songs cut. He's the one that's responsible for me having a career in songwriting. He got the songs to Gladys Knight. And he got me record deals. It was like the angel that I'd been looking for, you know. And it's because of Larry, really, that I wound up in the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
You didn't, you were at one of your lower points when you wrote Neither One of Us, which was your first hit, big hit.
This was before I met Larry.
Right.
Like I said, there were some things in between there.
Right. And can you succeed without realizing failure? Is failure a requirement to be successful?
I thought this was about me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you keep saying you kept asking people, and people wouldn't cut your songs, they wouldn't cut your songs,
Well,
things like that.
I don't know. I never thought like that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff didn't enter my mind. If I had never met Larry, by the way, I had $3,000 left when I met Larry. If I'd have got down to $1,000, I would have been gone.
Yeah.
I would have been back at Ole Miss, and I'd been coaching football.
But your perseverance over this whole career of yours and everything that you've done has been, to me, it's been what defines your success is this ability to not get too caught up in when things don't work out, but just look toward when things do work out.
The thing is, I started, in my mind, I started writing really good songs. And I believed in my songs 100%.
Right.
So that's what kept me plugging and plugging and plugging. But when if I ran out of money, I didn't want to wait tables or pump gas or be a janitor somewhere or something. I'd rather coach football than do those things.
Sure.
So that's why I would have loved to go back. And it's just, it was like it was meant to be. The whole thing was meant to be. And my songs were meant to be heard, which I think is incredible. That's an amazing thing to even me.
You've got two stories I'm desperately want you to tell. One is about how flag football and Farrah Fawcett created one of your biggest hits.
Well, like I said, Lee Majors was a friend of mine. We played on a flag football team together, and Lee had just started dating Farrah Fawcett. She had just moved to L.A. from Texas. As a matter of fact, one of their first dates, they came to a club called Arthur to see my band play. And Farrah even talked about that in a Cosmopolitan article about her. And I didn't keep that book. I wish I had. But late one afternoon, I called Lee, and Farrah answered the phone, and she said that Lee was out. And we just started talking, and she said that she was packing her clothes to take the midnight plane to Houston to visit her family. And when she said that, a little bell went off in my head, and when I got off the phone, I started writing a song called Midnight Plane to Houston. Took me about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and when I finished, I thought it was a really good song. But I thought it was a song that would have been good for Glenn Campbell, because he was having all the hits with Jimmy Webb songs like Galveston and Wichita Lineman, and By the Time I Get to Phoenix. And I thought, what the heck, this could follow in that group, you know. I played it for Lee and Farrah, and they loved it, and I recorded it on my first album that way. And that's really how that song came about. The title got changed when Sissy Houston recorded it. And they wanted to change the title because they wanted more R&B record, and they thought Midnight Train to Georgia would have more of an R&B feel to it. So Larry, my manager and publisher, argued with them for a while, saying, no, I don't want to change it. And then finally they talked him into it. We had already played Midnight Plane to Houston for Gladys Knight, and they rejected it. They loved the song, but they said, there's something that doesn't feel right for us. So when we got Sissy Houston's record, Larry sent it to Gladys because she had already had a hit with Neither One of Us Wants to Be the First to Say Goodbye. And they loved that record. They loved the title change because they're from Atlanta. They loved the train thing because their families always took trains, not planes. And that's how the title got changed and became Midnight Train to Georgia. So
you got one. Everybody here knows St. Jude's. Everybody knows Danny Thomas. That was his big creation and inspiration. But his other inspiration was his wife, and you helped him give her a present.
Yeah. Danny Thomas was, Larry Gordon, who again was my publisher, was married to Terry Thomas, who was Danny's daughter. And Danny Thomas was a silent partner in Larry's publishing company. So one of the first things Larry did when I signed with him was he wanted to find somebody to do a whole album of my songs. And he thought that Danny Thomas would be the perfect choice, because Danny was a recording artist. He didn't make records for top 40 radio, but he had a big fan base with his nightclub act and his TV shows. So Danny came into Larry's office one day and said, Larry, have Jim write a song for my wedding anniversary. He said, I want to give my wife something special. So Larry told me about it, and I didn't know what I was going to write. I kind of taken aback by it, but somehow one day the best thing that ever happened to me popped in my mind, And I thought, I don't remember ever hearing a song with that title. So I wrote a love song called "The Best Thing, You're the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me." And Danny loved it. And at the end of the recording, he says his wife's name, says, "Rosie, you're the best thing that ever happened to me." And he was the first person to cut that song. And after that, a lot of people started cutting it, and Gladys cut it, and it was a major, major worldwide hit for her.
This is not a big, and you don't have to, my wife and I, our anniversary is April 25th. I'm not saying you have to do anything special. I'm just saying that if
you know what,
if you're sitting around bored,
I probably got some lying around the house.
you created a lot of wonderful things, but in 1993 to 1997, you created your best work, didn't you? Which was your family.
Yeah.
You want to say anything about your family?
Well, what can I say? I thought I would probably never get married. I was getting older, and I thought I'd never have kids. And I met a girl in an acting class from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And we dated for a while, and then we split up for a while, and I moved back to Nashville, and then finally we got together again. And I married her at the age of 50. Not her, me. And then we had 2 children, Zach and Brighton. Zach's 21 now, and Brighton's 23, and they're great kids. Best time of my life.
Yeah. 2014, you were inducted into the National Songwriters Hall of Fame in New York. Huge honor.
No, the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame's in Nashville.
No, national. I said.
National.
Yeah.
I'm hard to hear.
No, it's okay. I want them to know I got that right.
Yeah, I talk about this in the book because that's something I never expected. I just didn't feel like I fit in that category with Irving Berlin and Francis Scott Key. And
He just had one really big song, though.
yeah,
You had a lot of big
it
songs.
lasted a long time.
It has.
And I really got stressed out. I really did. I got real panicky because I thought about all the other writers that weren't in the Songwriters Hall of Fame that should be in before me, if I ever got there. And it just, I don't know, it kind of freaked me out. And it took me a while to calm down and realize it was really happening, but it was really a surreal kind of thing. I don't think I could have written this book if I hadn't have gotten in the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
You wouldn't think that it would have been, well, you could have written the book. It's a fascinating book.
I think that was a crowning achievement.
Gave
for
you
a songwriter,
credibility, yeah.
You know, and it kind of made the picture complete.
Yeah.
After all the years of struggle to wind up in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, you just go, whoa, how did all this happen? And looking back on it, it really is pretty amazing. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I thought it was a really amazing story. I look back and I think, how did all this happen to me? And so anyway, I hope I've explained it in the book.
Yeah. Well, this is, you said in the book, recently I found a quote from the 1980s in the Clarion Ledger story. It made me laugh when I read it again. It said it in jest back then, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but there's truth in it. If I never do another thing in my life, I'll be remembered for riding midnight train to Georgia and for missing that handoff in the Mississippi State game. Tell me how many people are lucky enough to say they have 2 things to be remembered by. I think that you're going to be remembered for a lot of things. Jeff, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you talking him into writing this book and helping him get it done. It's a fascinating book. I covered 80% of what I wanted to ask him today, and we're out of time, which is about 10% of what you'll find if you read the book. It's an absolutely fascinating book, and I want to thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Now you got time for a couple of questions? We're late getting out, and so, babe, this is your call, but we can take a couple of questions if you want us to. Yeah?
You were serious about that 3-hour session, weren't you?
I'm telling you, if you saw my notes, you can take it by the house. I'll show you my notes for this thing today.
What was your major at Ole Miss?
Physical education.
Oh, that's unusual. I thought it'd be social studies.
Be what?
Social studies or history. That's
Oh,
what our
history.
coaches teach.
Honest to goodness, true story, I failed history 4 times. Passed it the 5th time. I failed literature 4 times. Passed it the 5th time. Now, I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying that's part of the amazement. I didn't like either one of those things. So here I am writing my own history and writing songs that could be considered art. I don't know how many people consider it, but
Well, Midnight Train to Georgia is ranked 29th best song in history. Is that right?
the National Endowment for the Arts and Record Industry Association of America got together in, I forgot what year, 5 years ago or something, and chose the 350 songs of all time, the best songs of all time, in their estimation. And Midnight Train came in at number 29, between the Beatles' I Want to Hold Your Hand and John Lennon's Imagine. So that kind of made me feel like I'd maybe done something right.
Yeah.
You learned more than you thought you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else?
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
Jimmy's sisters are over here that you talked about. If you want to introduce them.
Do y'all want to stand up?
Lisa and Sherry.
No, you're not going to stand up. Y'all are as extroverted as he is, I can see. Yeah. But where's Shan? Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else? Anything?
Oh, by the way, his wife is here.
I didn't see her. Hey, how are you? It's good to see you.
Not my wife. Shan's wife.
Yeah, Shan's right. That's a good point. I know her, so I knew what they were talking about, but I did not. I didn't see her.
After you write a book, you think about things like that.
Yes, ma'am.
Several years ago, you did a concert for the National Center, I think it was, that we had what's called the Summit now,
Right.
and I've got autographed books of the songs that you put in those books. Are they worth anything?
Not to me.
There's somebody back here I couldn't see.
I think I remember you were playing today in high school over here. Am I correct? Did you play in Tupelo in high school?
Did you play in Tupelo when you were in high school?
No, we didn't play Tupelo. Oh, you mean football or?
No, in your band. Your band.
Yeah, we did. We played dances over here. Sure did.
You actually played for one that I was part of one time.
What you say?
You played for her one time, and she thought you were really great.
I played for you.
Well, at a dance that she was at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we did 2 or 3.
Anybody else going once? Yeah.
Does Herb Ball like the music?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he did. There's a letter in the book written by Coach Vaught to an attorney in Pontotoc named Jack Godey. Coach Vaught expresses, well, let me read that letter.
I got it right here. I was going to read it if we had time.
We got time.
But,
Y'all don't have to worry.
Oh, let's see. Let me find it real quick. Well, let's see. It was in this first section, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This is the end of one chapter.
Which chapter?
It's somewhere along
Yeah, it's
in
a
there.
bit. Yeah. I had it marked, and then I decided I didn't
Yeah,
have
let me
time to
find
read
it.
it.
I can
Oh, there it is right there.
Okay.
There it is
Hold
right
that a
there.
second.
Yeah, absolutely. Need my glasses?
Yes, I do.
There you go.
just going to say I forgot mine. Good gracious.
I have some other glasses if you'd rather.
This letter was written on April the 16th, 1964. This is before the start of football season in 1964. I'll read you this to start it. Coach Vaught was asked by the Clarion-Ledger reporter Butch John what he thought about me playing music in the off-season into the late hours of the night in clubs. Coach Vaught's response: I couldn't have cared less if you played the tuba at 2 a.m. So that gives you an indication. Dear Mr. Doty, Jim Weatherly has been in touch with me for some time with regard to exploiting his talents as a musician. I have heard Jim perform and think he has outstanding talent and is worthy of national recognition. However, there is some conflict in receiving remuneration from employment while on SAC scholarship. Also, in view of the fact that Jim is very talented as a football player, we thought it might be well to tie his musical talent in with his football talent and try to exploit both of these talents at the same time, namely around the first of the year 1965. Now this is Coach Vaught writing this. Jim has been approached by several people who desire to record his songs. I'm very anxious that he have the best contact possible and with people who can do something toward getting this before the people nationally. Jim needs your help and advice. We are thinking about making the recordings during this summer and holding them for release around December the 15th. That's Coach Vaught talking about making records. I expect Jim, well, I shouldn't read this part, but I will. I expect Jim to have an outstanding year in football. He is All-American talent. If our team does well, I feel Jim will have a fine chance of making an All-American player. Then too, our game with the state, which is December the 5th, will be nationally televised. They are always looking for unusual talents in some players. I believe, in fact, that Jim is talented musically. I believe at this time I might have an opportunity to put before our broadcasters the fact that Jim is talented musically. Also, I'm in hopes of getting him on the Look All-American football team, which is presented nationally on the Ed Sullivan Show. It will be known that Jim has this musical talent, and I feel sure they would like to have him demonstrate such on this type show. They are always looking for players to demonstrate any type talent. I feel we might be able to tie this in well with the release of Jim's recordings. Jim is aware of this letter and is anxious to come by and see you for advice. I shall appreciate anything you might suggest that would help Jim. Sincerely yours, John H. Vaught, head football coach.
That's it. He is oh, thanks. He's a marketing guy. Who would have known it? He's a marketing guy.
Yeah, he says I was aware of that letter, but I tell you the truth, I didn't know he felt that way. So that might just been something he decided to put in there. But all the rest of that, you know, the story would have been really more complete if I'd have made All-American and Ole Miss had had another winning season. But it didn't work out that way. So.
Well, I am going to end with this. Bob Talbert of the Detroit Free Press said when you came out with your first solo album, Weatherly, which is a culmination of it was a big deal for you because it was all original songs and you recorded them.
Right.
And he said, this is the best debut album I've ever heard. Jim Weatherly is the most talented new songwriting talent since the likes of Neil Diamond and Jim Webb. It's honest music about the things we all share, pride in something tarnished, love over or love started too soon, hopes and fears that tomorrow will only be like so many more todays. Things that kiss and kick the psyche. Little stories and big thoughts. I listen to literally hundreds of new talent every year. None has ever hit me with the impact of Jim Weatherly.
Yeah.
I think that's what got you in the Hall of Fame, making people feel that way.
Well,
Yeah.
that was a surprise too. You know, it was, the way I look back on it and see it now, it was all just meant to happen. That's the only thing I can figure out.
Well, I think the only thing left for you to do is write me a good song for my anniversary. I feel like if you could do it for Danny Thomas, you could do it for me. But anyway, thank you all for coming so much. We appreciate it. Reed's has books on sale at the front, so please get your copy of the book.